Out here in the fringe, you learn that every job falls into one of two categories: bad or worse. This one was definitely worse. The pay was good enough to finally clear my debts with the syndicate and get my ship, the Wanderer, out of impound. But the destination was a death sentence, and the client was a true believer. And in my experience, nothing gets you killed faster than a true believer. My name is Jett. I'm a smuggler, a cargo pilot, a man who moves things from point A to point B, with no questions asked, as long as the credits clear. I was hired to fly a brilliant botanist to a forbidden planet, a ghost world under a permanent corporate quarantine. I thought it would be a simple drop-off, in and out. But now, my ship is a wreck. The planet is trying to kill us, and the beautiful, infuriatingly optimistic woman who hired me is looking at me like I'm her only hope. The worst part is, she might be right. The job had sounded simple enough on the encrypted comm channel. EO. Woman named Dr. Aris Thorne, representing some well-funded agricultural collective. Needed transport to the Veridia system. No questions asked. High-risk bonus. Payment on arrival. For a man with a price on his head and a ship held together by little more than stubbornness and bypass safety protocols, it was an offer I couldn't refuse. I met her at a dirty, forgotten docking bay on a backwater moon. She stood out like a supernova in a dust cloud. She was beautiful, with long light brown hair, tied back in a messy but practical ponytail, and green eyes that held a spark of infectious, almost childlike, curiosity. She was clutching a sample collection kit like it was the most precious thing in the universe. She was pure, unadulterated hope, and my cynical, world-weary soul immediately disliked her. "You're Jett?" she'd asked, her voice clear and confident. "I'm the guy who flies the ship," I'd grunted, tossing her single, heavy-looking crate into the cargo hold. "Get in. We burn on my mark." The journey to Veridia was 3 cycles of tense silence. The Wanderer is not a luxury liner. It's a cramped, functional, and perpetually messy cockpit that smells of recycled air and old, spilled synth coffee. I spent the time running my ship, and she spent it hunched over her datapad, studying holographic images of impossible-looking plants, her green eyes glowing with a fervor that made me deeply uncomfortable. "You know Veridia is under a Class 4 quarantine by the Ethel Corporation, right?" I asked on the final approach, more to break the silence than anything. "Entering the system is a capital offense. The quarantine is a political measure, not a biological one," she replied without looking up from her work. Ethel failed to stabilize the ecosystem after the terraforming collapse. Rather than admit failure, they declared the planet a dead zone and forbid anyone from seeing their garden had run wild. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were burning, with the fire of a zealot. "Veridia isn't dead, Jett. It's the most alive place in the galaxy, and it holds the starseed, a plant with unique regenerative properties. It's the only thing that can stop the blight that's killing my home world. A lost world, a miracle plant, a dying home. It was the stuff of legends, of children's stories, and I was the cynical bus driver for the galaxy's most optimistic tourist. Getting past the quarantine net was the easy part. The Ethel Corporation hadn't seriously patrolled this sector in years. A few tricky maneuvers, a bit of signal spoofing, and the Wanderer was slipping into Veridia's upper atmosphere. The view was, I had to admit, breathtaking. The planet was a swirl of deep greens and brilliant blues, a living jewel. But my ship's sensors were already screaming at me. The atmosphere was a chaotic mess of electromagnetic interference and strange, biological energy readings. This was not a stable ecosystem. It was a jungle on a planetary scale. That's when it happened. A sudden, violent energy surge, a wave of pure, raw power that erupted from the planet's surface. The alarms in my cockpit blared. My controls went dead. "What was that?" Aris yelled over the roar. "That," I grunted, fighting the joystick, which was now just a useless piece of metal in my hand, was the planet telling us we're not welcome. We fell. It was a long, terrifying tumble through the thick, humid atmosphere. I saw flashes of impossible landscapes through the viewport, forests of glowing purple trees, rivers of a silvery metallic liquid. I managed to wrestle some level of control back in the final moments, enough to turn our death plunge into a controlled crash. We hit the ground with a deafening, bone-jarring shriek of tearing metal, carving a long, ugly scar through a forest of what looked like giant, bioluminescent mushrooms. Then, silence, broken only by the hiss of smoke and the frantic, panicked beeping of a dozen dying systems. I was alive. My head was pounding, but I was alive. I looked over at Aris. She was strapped into her co-pilot's seat, her eyes wide, but she was unharmed. "Rule number 1 of flying with a smuggler, Doctor," I said, my voice a rough rasp. "Always expect a bumpy landing." We spent the next hour assessing the damage. It was bad. The power core was fractured, leaking radiation. The primary comms array was a twisted wreck, and the hull was breached in 3 different places. The Wanderer wasn't going anywhere. We were stranded. Aris, to her credit, did not panic. She was a scientist. She immediately began to analyze the situation. The ship's emergency life support is functional, but the breach means it's fighting the external atmosphere. Based on the power leak, I estimate we have 72 hours of breathable air. Maximum. 3 days. We had 3 days to find a way off this rock before our own ship became our tomb. We stepped out of the mangled wreck of my ship and into the garden. The air was thick, warm, and smelled of damp earth and 1,000 strange, sweet pollens. We were in a valley, surrounded by a forest of colossal, glowing blue mushrooms. The ground was a soft carpet of glowing green moss, and the air was alive with luminous golden spores that drifted on the gentle breeze, our first taste of the planet's particles. It was the most beautiful, most alien, and most terrifying place I had ever seen. Aris, however, was in heaven. She was instantly on her knees, her sample, kid out, her eyes wide with a wonder that was completely at odds with our desperate situation. "Incredible," she whispered, her fingers gently touching the glowing moss. "The cellular structure is unlike anything I've ever seen. This entire forest, it's a single, symbiotic organism." "That's great, Doctor," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm as I leaned against a giant mushroom, my own hand resting on the pulse emitter at my hip. "Can we eat it? Can we use it to fix the ship? If not, I'm not interested." She looked up at me, her green eyes flashing with a sudden, fierce fire. "You don't get it, do you? This is life. Raw, untamed, beautiful life. My people are dying, Jett. The starseed is the only thing that can save them, and I am not leaving this planet without it." Her idealism was going to get us killed, but there was a strength in her, a core of steel beneath the hopeful scientist that I had to respect. "Fine," I said. "You want your miracle plant? Let's go find it." "But we do. It my way. Stay close, touch nothing, and if I tell you to run, you run. This garden is a beautiful tomb, and I don't intend to be its newest resident." I took the lead, my emitter in hand, my sharp brown eyes scanning the alien jungle for threats. She followed, her initial wonder now tempered by a reluctant caution. We were a strange pair, the cynical pilot who had lost his faith in everything, and the brilliant botanist who believed a single flower could save the universe. As we walked deeper, into the glowing, silent forest, I felt her eyes on my back. I was the tough guy, the survivor, the one with the weapon. But I knew, with a sinking, cold certainty, that in this strange, wild world, her knowledge was a far greater weapon than my emitter would ever be, and my survival, and hers, was now completely, utterly dependent on the one person in the galaxy I didn't trust. Her. We moved through the whispering forest like ghosts in a cathedral. The silence was the first thing that got to you. It was a deep, profound, and unnatural quiet, broken only by the soft crunch of our boots on the glowing moss and the whisper-thin chime of the metallic leaves shivering in the humid air. I had spent half my life in the sterile, humming silence of deep space. But this was different. This was the silence of a world that was watching. My hand never strayed far from my pulse emitter, my smuggler's instinct screaming that a place this beautiful had to be hiding 1,000 different ways to kill you. Aris, on the other hand, walked with a quiet, reverent wonder. Her initial reckless curiosity had been replaced by a focused, scientific awe. She would pause every few feet, her datapad out, scanning the bizarre, beautiful flora. Trees that dripped a sap of liquid, glowing silver. Flowers that opened and closed in response to our proximity, their petals made of what looked like colored glass. "This is impossible," she murmured, her voice a soft breath of wonder. "The energy readings are off the charts. The entire ecosystem is powered by some kind of geothermal chemosynthesis. It's a closed loop. It shouldn't be this vibrant." "Save the lecture, doctor," I grunted, my eyes scanning the dense, glowing undergrowth. "Just tell me which of these impossible, vibrant things is going to try and eat us first." She shot me a look of pure annoyance, her green eyes flashing. "Not everything in the universe is a threat, Jett. Some things are just beautiful." "Beauty is a luxury we don't have time for," I countered. "We have 71 hours of oxygen left. Your starseed, where is it?" She consulted her datapad, which now displayed a topographical map of the region, pieced together from our ship's corrupted landing data. "The energy signature I'm tracking, the one consistent with the starseed's biological markers, is coming from that direction," she said, pointing towards a range of dark, jagged mountains on the horizon. "In a concentrated area, a valley, probably one of the old Ethel Corporation biodomes. It was a full day's hike away at least, a day through a jungle where I was the invasive species. The first real danger came not in the form of a monster, but of the world itself. We were crossing a shallow, bubbling stream, the water a clear, inviting blue. I was about to step into it when Aris grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Don't," she said, her voice sharp. She pointed. The stream bed wasn't made of rock. It was a carpet of small, pulsating, blue crystalline structures. "Those are lithivores," she explained, her voice low. "Silicon-based organisms. They look like crystals, but they're alive. And they're carnivorous. They'll strip the flesh from your bones in seconds." I stared at the beautiful, deadly stream, a cold sweat trickling down my back. She had just saved my life. I hadn't seen a threat. I had seen pretty blue rocks. For the first time, I began to realize how truly out of my element I was. My skills, piloting, fighting, lying, were useless here. Here, knowledge was the only weapon that mattered, and she was the only one who had it. We found another way across, a fallen, metallic tree trunk forming a natural bridge. The balance of power between us had subtly, irrevocably shifted. I was still the one with the weapon, but she was the one keeping us alive. As we walked, a strange, rhythmic, clicking sound began to echo through the forest. It grew louder, closer. I pushed Aris behind me, my pulse emitter raised, its barrel glowing with a menacing, ready light. "Stay back," I commanded. From between the glowing mushroom trees, a creature emerged. It was a herd of them. They were like six-legged deer, their bodies a graceful fusion of sinew and smooth, white plating. Their large, dark eyes regarded us with a calm, placid curiosity, not aggression. The clicking sound was coming from their legs, a form of echolocation. "Striders," Aris whispered from behind me, her voice full of awe, not fear. "They're herbivores. The Ethel Corporation designed them to maintain the ecosystem. They're beautiful." I kept my emitter raised. In my experience, anything with that many legs was not to be trusted. The lead strider took a hesitant step towards us, its head tilted. It wasn't looking at me. It was looking at Aris, or more specifically, at the small, glowing sample of moss she was carrying in a containment field. "It's curious," she murmured. "It's never seen a human." She took a slow, deliberate step out from behind me, her hand outstretched, not with the moss, but just as a gesture of peace. The creature watched her, its large dark eyes blinking slowly. It was a moment of impossible, breathtaking connection between two beings from different worlds. And in that moment of distraction, the ground beneath my feet gave way. There was no warning. Just a sudden, sickening lurch, a crack of corroded metal, and I was falling. I had stepped on the disguised roof of a forgotten underground Ethel research outpost, its structure weakened by centuries of decay. I landed hard, 10 feet down, in a shower of dirt and rusted metal. A sharp, white-hot pain exploded in my lower leg. I looked down. A jagged piece of rusted steel, part of the collapsed roof, had impaled my calf, pinning me to the floor. Jett! Aris's terrified face appeared in the hole above me, silhouetted against the glowing forest. I'm all right, I grunted, sweat beading on my forehead as I fought back a wave of nausea. But I wasn't all right. The metal was deep. I was trapped. She didn't hesitate. She found a thick vine, secured it to the base of a metallic tree, and slid down into the darkness beside me. Don't move, she commanded, her voice shifting instantly from frightened botanist to calm, efficient field medic. She knelt, her green eyes assessing the injury with a clinical precision. It's gone clean. Through the muscle, she said, her voice grim. We have to get it out, and we have to stop the bleeding fast. The metals in this soil are highly toxic. She took out her medical kit, her hands moving with a swift, practiced confidence. She administered a coagulant and a powerful painkiller from a hypospray. The sharp edges of the agony in my leg began to soften, replaced by a warm, dull throb. This is going to hurt, she warned. She gripped the steel shard with both hands. I gritted my teeth, my knuckles white. She pulled. The sound of metal tearing through flesh was a sickening, wet sound. I cried out, a raw, guttural sound, my vision flashing white. Then, it was out. She immediately pressed a biofoam sealant to the wound, the cool, tingling sensation, a welcome relief. I lay there, panting, my body slick with sweat. She had saved me. Again. Her face, illuminated by the light filtering through the hole above, was a mask of intense, focused concern. In her eyes, I didn't see an idealist or a zealot. I saw a survivor, someone as tough and resilient as I was. See, doctor, I rasped, a weak, pained grin on my face. Told you this place was dangerous. A small, reluctant smile touched her lips. You were right, pilot, she admitted. She finished dressing the wound with a practiced efficiency. There, you'll live. She looked at my leg, then at the hole above. But you're not climbing out of here on that. We were trapped again, in a new, darker, and much smaller prison. The forgotten research outpost was a tomb of rusted steel and silence. The only light was the faint, ghostly glow of the biomechanical forest filtering through the hole in the ceiling, a cruel reminder of the beautiful, dangerous world we were now trapped beneath. The pain in my leg had subsided to a dull, persistent throb, a constant physical anchor to our desperate situation. My pulse emitter, my symbol of authority and control, lay uselessly on the floor a few feet away. I was grounded, broken. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I was completely at the mercy of someone else. Aris, having done all she could for my wound, turned her attention to our new prison. She was not a pilot or an engineer, but she had a scientist's methodical mind. She swept the single circular room with the beam of her handheld scanner, her brow furrowed in concentration. The outpost was ancient, a relic of the Ethel Corporation's initial, failed attempt to colonize Veridia. Rusted, consoles lined the walls, their screens dark and shattered. Specimen containers, long since cracked and empty, lay scattered on the floor. This was a xenobotany lab, she said, her voice a soft echo in the dead space. They were studying the native flora, trying to find a way to control it. She ran a finger over a faded, peeling decal on a console, the Ethel corporate logo. They failed. Story of my life, I grunted, trying to shift into a more comfortable position against the cold metal wall. Every movement sent a fresh jolt of pain up my leg. She looked at me, her green eyes softening with a flicker of something I hadn't seen before. Pity. Or maybe empathy. We're not going to fail, Jett, she said, her voice holding a conviction I did not feel. The ship's emergency beacon will activate automatically in 48 hours if we don't return. Someone will come looking for us. The Ethel Corporation will come looking for their quarantine zone, I corrected, my voice bitter. They'll find my ship. They'll find us. And they'll shoot us on sight for trespassing. That's not a rescue, Doctor. That's a death sentence. The grim reality of my words settled in the silence between us. We were trapped by my injury, but our real prison was time. We had to find a way out of here, and back to my ship, before that beacon activated. "The door," I said, pointing with my chin towards a heavy, rusted blast door on the far side of the room. "There has to be a manual override, a power source." For the next few hours, she became the engineer. I would guide her, drawing on my rough smuggler's knowledge of old-world tech, and she would perform the delicate work, her nimble fingers a stark contrast to my own, now useless, brute strength. We found a backup power conduit, miraculously still holding a residual charge. Aris, with a focus that was breathtaking to watch, managed to splice the conduit and divert a trickle of power to the door's control panel. The panel flickered to life with a shower of sparks, displaying a single grim message in a faded red font. "Lockdown protocol engaged. Manual override requires level 7 administrative key." A key we did not have. "So much for that," I sighed, leaning my head back against the wall, the last flicker of hope dying. Aris did not give up. She sat at the console, her fingers flying as she attempted to bypass the ancient security code. But it was no use. The Ethel Corporation had built their locks to last. Defeated, she slumped into the chair beside the console, the silence returning, heavier than before. We were well and truly trapped. The pain in my leg was a dull, constant rhythm. The silence was broken only by the sound of our breathing. "Tell me a story," she said suddenly, her voice quiet. "What?" I asked, confused. She turned to look at me, her face half lit by the red glow of the console's error message. "To pass the time. You've seen the galaxy, Jett. You're a smuggler. You must have a million stories. Tell me one. Real one." I was not a storyteller. I was a man of action, of quick decisions and quicker escapes. But as I looked at her, at the genuine open curiosity in her green eyes, I found myself wanting to answer. So I told her. I told her about my first ship, a piece of junk I had won in a card game. I told her about a cargo run through the asteroid fields of the Cygnus Arm, about the beauty of light ice catching the glow of a distant nebula. I told her about the betrayal that had cost me that ship, and earned me the price on my head. I spoke for a long time, the words coming easier than I had expected. She listened, her chin resting on her hand, her gaze never leaving my face. She did not judge. She did not offer sympathy. She just listened. It was the most intimate connection I had ever had with another person. When I finished, the silence returned. But it was a different kind of silence now. It was filled with the ghost of my own past. "Your turn," I said, my voice rough. "Tell me why. Why risk everything for a single, maybe mythical flower?" She took a deep breath, and she told me. She told me about her homeworld, a small agricultural colony. She told me about the blight, a slow, creeping genetic plague that was killing their crops, turning their fertile world to dust. And she told me about her little sister, her face illuminated by a profound, heartbreaking love, a young girl whose lungs were slowly failing from the same dust that was killing their world. The starseed was not for her people. It was for her. The scientists, the government, they had all given up, Aris whispered, a single tear tracing a path through the dust on her cheek. They called it a lost cause. But I found a reference in an old forgotten Ethel Corporation database to the starseed of Veridia, a plant that could supposedly adapt to any blight, that could recode the very soil. It was a 1 in a billion chance, but it was the only chance she had left. I looked at her, at this brilliant, beautiful, and ridiculously stubborn woman. She was not a naive idealist. She was a warrior, fighting a desperate, impossible war for someone she loved. She was not so different from me after all. We were both just survivors, trying to outrun a past that was determined to kill us. In that moment, in the dark, cold silence of our prison, something shifted. The wall I had built around my own heart, the cynical, pragmatic shell of the smuggler, cracked. I saw not a client, not a complication, but a woman of incredible strength and a heartbreaking vulnerability. and I felt a sudden, fierce, and utterly illogical urge to protect her. I reached out, my hand closing over hers where it rested on the console. Her skin was warm. She looked at our joined hands, then up at me, a surprised, questioning look in her green eyes. I didn't say anything. I didn't have the words. I just held her hand, a silent, simple acknowledgement. You are not alone in this fight. She gave my hand a small, grateful squeeze, a silent reply. I know. And in the shared, quiet darkness, surrounded by the ghosts of a failed colony, 2 survivors, a cynical pilot and an idealistic botanist, found a new and unexpected reason to fight. Each other. The simple act of holding her hand had changed the composition of the air in the small, dark room. The silence was no longer one of despair, but of a shared, quiet resolve. We were still trapped. My leg was still a throbbing ruin. But we were no longer just a pilot and his client. We were a team. And that, I realized, was a far more dangerous and complicated thing to be. All right, Doctor, I said, my voice a low, determined rumble, breaking the silence. The direct approach failed. Time for a smuggler's approach. I looked at the locked blast door, then at the humming, sparking power panel she had jury-rigged. That administrative key. It's just a piece of code. A question with only one right answer. And every code can be broken. We just need to ask the right questions. A new light, a spark of intellectual fire, ignited in Aris's green eyes. She was a scientist. I had just given her a problem to solve. A puzzle. The system is ancient, she mused, her mind already racing. The encryption is probably a simple 256-bit quantum lock. My datapad doesn't have the processing power to brute force it in time. We need more power. The outpost has its own power source, I said, remembering the schematics. The geothermal vent. If we can get it back online, even for a minute, it might be enough. Thus began our new, desperate plan. I was the mission commander, immobilized but with the technical knowledge of a shiprat who has spent his life hot-wiring and jury-rigging systems. She was my hands and feet, my brilliant, tireless field agent. I would guide her, talking her through the complex, dangerous process of reactivating a 1,000-year-old power system. And she, with her steady hands and fearless determination, would execute the commands. It was a dangerous dance. I had to guide her through a maze of corroded panels and sparking high-voltage conduits. The third panel from the left, Aris, I'd say, my voice tense. You should see a series of coolant regulators. You need to bypass the primary and reroute it to the secondary. But if you crosswire the plasma conduits, you'll flash fry the entire grid, and us. I would watch, my heart in my throat, as she would calmly, precisely, follow my instructions, her face illuminated by the shower of sparks from a live wire, her expression one of pure, focused concentration. She was not a technician, but she had the mind of a genius and the courage of a soldier. She never hesitated. She never complained. She just worked. After hours of painstaking, nerve-wracking work, a deep, low hum, a sound the outpost had not made in centuries, began to vibrate through the floor. The lights on the main console flickered, and the faded red lockdown message was replaced by a bright, steady green system online. We had done it. We had woken the beast. It's not going to last long, I warned. The system is unstable. You have minutes, maybe less. Go. Aris was already at the door's control panel, her datapad interfaced, her fingers a blur on the holographic keyboard. She was a whirlwind of focused energy, throwing every ounce of her intellect against the ancient, stubborn lock. I could see the code, a waterfall of glowing green and red symbols, scrolling on her screen. The outpost's lights flickered erratically. The hum of the generator grew strained, a mechanical groan of protest. I'm almost there, she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. It's an old hegemony-class encryption. It's fighting back. A new, high-pitched alarm began to blare. Warning, geothermal core, overheating, containment failure imminent. Aris, get away from there, I yelled. The whole level is going to blow. Just a few more seconds, she shot back, not taking her eyes off the screen. The floor was now vibrating violently. The lights flickered, died, and then came back on, dimmer than before. The generator was failing. Then, a new sound, a soft, melodic chime, and the loud, satisfying clunk of a dozen magnetic locks. Disengaging. She had done it. The heavy blast door slid open with a groaning screech, revealing the dark, glowing, and beautiful biomechanical forest outside. Freedom. "I told you we wouldn't fail," she said, a triumphant, exhausted smile on her face as she turned to me. But our celebration was cut short. The rumbling from the outpost's core was now a deafening roar. A section of the ceiling collapsed. The entire structure was about to detonate. "We have to go!" I yelled. "Now!" She rushed to my side, her smaller frame supporting my weight as I struggled to my feet, my injured leg a blaze of fresh agony. We half limped, half ran out of the dying outpost, just as a wave of superheated steam and shrapnel erupted from the entrance behind us. The explosion threw us to the ground. We lay there for a moment, panting, our ears ringing, the smell of burnt metal and ozone filling the air. We were alive. We were out. It took us hours to make our way back to the ship. A slow, agonizing journey. Leaned on her, my arm slung over her shoulder, every step a fresh wave of pain. She was my crutch, my strength. The roles had been completely, utterly reversed. She was the protector now, and I was the one who needed saving. The intimacy of it, the forced, desperate proximity, was a silent, powerful thing that neither of us dared to acknowledge. We found the Wanderer as we had left it, a broken metal scar in the heart of the glowing alien jungle. Our sanctuary, our tomb. We still had a fractured power core, a useless comms array, and a clock that was ticking down. We were out of the frying pan and back in the fire. "Now what, pilot?" Aris asked, her voice quiet, the exhaustion finally catching up to her. I looked at the mangled wreck of my ship, my home, my pride. And then I looked at her face, smudged with dirt and grease, her green eyes full of a strength that matched my own. My cynicism, the hard protective shell I had built around myself for years, felt tired, pointless. For the first time, I was stranded with someone I didn't want to escape from. "Now," I said, a slow, genuine smile spreading across my face. "We get to work. You're the genius botanist. This forest is your playground. We need a power source. Find me one." A new shared purpose ignited between us. The next cycle was a blur of frantic, focused activity. She, with her encyclopedic knowledge of this alien world, identified a species of large, bioluminescent plant, a sun petal, that stored and discharged massive amounts of electrical energy. I, with my smuggler's ingenuity, guided her on how to carefully harvest the plant's energy nodes and splice them, one by one, into my ship's battered power grid. It was a crazy, impossible plan. It was science fiction jury-rigging of the highest order. But as we worked together, a perfect, seamless team, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. It was the dangerous, illogical, and utterly beautiful feeling of hope. And as I watched Aris, her face alight with a fierce, brilliant joy as she successfully connected another living power cell to my dying ship, I knew, with a certainty that was both thrilling and terrifying, that I was in very, very deep trouble. The Wanderer, my broken, dying ship, began to breathe again. It was a strange, organic kind of life. With each sun petal energy node Aris carefully spliced into the main grid, a new section of the ship would flicker to life. Not with the clean, steady hum of a fusion core, but with a soft, pulsing, golden glow. The emergency lights in the cockpit, which had been a harsh, clinical red, now shone with a warm, living light. My ship was no longer just a machine, it was a hybrid, a fusion of cold, technology, and the wild, untamed life of Veridia. It was a testament to her genius and my desperation. We worked with a shared, unspoken rhythm. I had never worked with a partner before. My life as a smuggler had been a solitary, trust-no-one existence. But with Aris, it was different. It was easy. I would be wrestling with a fused power conduit, my frustration mounting, and her hand would appear with the exact tool I needed, before I had even asked for it. She would be analyzing a complex energy schematic on her datapad, her brow furrowed, and I would point to a single, overlooked variable that would solve the equation. We were two halves of a single, efficient, problem-solving mind. The intimacy of the work was a constant, simmering presence. We were in a small, cramped cockpit, our shoulders brushing, our hands often touching as we passed tools and cables. I was acutely aware of the scent of her, a mix of the alien pollen from the forest and a clean, human warmth. I was aware of the way her green eyes would light up with a brilliant, infectious fire when she solved a problem. I was a man who had spent his life running from connections, and now I was trapped in a metal box, with a woman who felt more like home than any place I had ever known. After a full cycle of non-stop frantic work, it was done. The last sun petal node was connected. We stood in the cockpit, the entire ship now glowing with the soft, golden, life-giving energy of the alien plants. The main console, which had been dark and dead, flickered to life. Power grid stable, life support at 100%, propulsion systems online. We had done it. A wave of pure, unadulterated relief washed over me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. I looked at Aris. Her face was smudged with grease and dirt, her light brown hair a chaotic mess, and she was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. She was looking at the console, a slow, brilliant, and utterly triumphant smile spreading across her face. "We did it, Jett," she whispered, her voice a breath of pure, exhausted joy. "We actually did it." And then she laughed, a real, genuine, and unrestrained laugh of pure happiness. The sound was a supernova in the quiet, tense world we had been living in. Without thinking, without planning, I laughed with her. The tension, the fear, the desperation of the last few days, it all melted away in that one shared, explosive moment of victory. When our laughter subsided, a new kind of silence fell between us. A heavy, charged, and deeply intimate silence. We were standing in the warm, golden glow of the cockpit, just inches apart. The rest of the universe, the Syndicate, the Ethel Corporation, her dying sister, it all faded away. There was only this ship, this moment, and her. I could see the frantic, beautiful pulse in the delicate skin of her neck. I could see the reflection of the golden lights dancing in her wide green eyes. And I knew, with an absolute certainty that had nothing to do with logic, that I was going to kiss her. And I knew, from the way her breath hitched, the way her own gaze dropped to my lips, that she knew it too. I closed the distance. My hand came up, my rough, calloused fingers gently touching her cheek, wiping away a smudge of grease. Her skin was so soft. She leaned into my touch, her eyes fluttering closed, and then I kissed her. It was not a gentle, hesitant kiss. It was a collision. It was desperate, and it was hungry. And it was 1,000 unsaid things, all at once. It was the release of 100 hours of fear and tension. It was the raw, undeniable gravity of two lonely, stubborn survivors who had finally found a safe harbor in each other. Her arms wrapped around my neck, pulling me closer, and I lifted her up, her body pressing against the cold, hard console as my own hands tangled in her long, messy, light brown hair. The kiss was a storm, a beautiful, perfect, and all-consuming storm, and I never wanted it to end. When we finally broke, apart, we were both breathless, the air in the cockpit thick and electric. We just looked at each other, a silent, dawning realization in our eyes. This was no longer about a job. It was no longer about survival. It had become something else entirely, something real. "The star seed," she whispered, her voice a low, husky thing. "We still have to find it." "I know," I said, my own voice rough. My hand was still on her cheek, my thumb gently stroking her skin. "But the ship is alive. We have power. We have time." We had a little less than 24 hours of oxygen left before the emergency beacon would activate. But it was enough. The next morning, we set out again, but this time, it was different. We were not a pilot and a client. We were partners. A team. We walked side by side through the glowing alien jungle, a new, unspoken intimacy connecting us. We found the valley of the biodomes she had seen on the map. It was a graveyard of Ethel Corporation's ambition, a collection of colossal, shattered glass domes, half swallowed by the vibrant, aggressive flora of Veridia. It was inside the largest, most central biodome that we found it. It was not a flower. It was not a tree. It was a single, breathtakingly beautiful crystalline structure that grew in the center of the ruined laboratory. It pulsed with a soft, internal golden light, the same life-giving energy that was now powering my ship. The air around it hummed with a quiet, immense power. It was the heart of the planet. The starseed. Aris approached it with a reverent scientific awe, her datapad already scanning, analyzing. "It's perfect," she breathed. "The genetic code it's rewriting the blight. It's not just a cure, it's a reset, a new beginning." But as I looked at the beautiful, pulsing crystal, my smuggler's instincts, the part of me that always saw the trap, screamed a silent warning. On the floor, around the base of the starseed, were the bodies. Dozens of them. The skeletal remains of the Ethel. Corporation scientists, their lab coats rotted to rags, their bones bleached by time. They were not shot. They were not attacked. They were simply lying there, as if they had all just laid down and gone to sleep. "Aris," I said, my voice a low, urgent warning, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Something is wrong here. Very wrong." As I spoke, a new sound filled the air. A soft, gentle, and impossibly melodic humming. It seemed to come from the starseed itself, a beautiful, hypnotic, and deeply, deeply unsettling song. The golden, luminous spores in the air, which had been drifting aimlessly, now began to swirl, to coalesce, to move with a strange, new purpose. And as I breathed in the thick, sweet air, a strange, pleasant lethargy, a feeling of profound, boneless peace began to spread through my limbs. All I wanted to do was lie down, to rest, to sleep, forever. The humming was a lullaby, a beautiful siren song that promised an end to all struggle, all pain. It seeped into my bones, a warm golden lethargy that was incredibly, dangerously seductive. My eyelids felt heavy. The deep throbbing ache in my leg, which had been a constant grounding pain, simply faded away into a pleasant numbness. Every instinct, every fiber of my being screamed at me to lie down on the soft, glowing moss, to close my eyes, and to just let go. I saw Aris, her face, slack, her green eyes glazed over with a look of blissful, empty peace. She was swaying slightly on her feet, already lost to the song. This was the trap. This was the tomb. The Ethel scientists had not been killed by a monster. They had been seduced to death by a beautiful, perfect, and utterly passive predator. The starseed was not a cure. It was a parasite. It didn't attack. It invited. It offered a peace so absolute, so complete, that you simply gave up the will to live. The quarantine, I realized with a jolt of cold, horrifying clarity, had not been to keep people out. It had been to keep it in. "Aris!" I yelled, my voice a rough, desperate bark. I grabbed her arm, my grip tight, shaking her. "Snap out of it! It's a trap!" For a second, she looked at me with those same vacant, blissed-out eyes. Then, a flicker of her old, sharp scientific mind returned. "The spores," she whispered, her voice slow, slurred. "They're a psychoactive agent, a soporific, inducing a state of euphoria. It's putting us to sleep, Doctor," I said, my own thoughts feeling slow, syrupy. I had to fight it. I bit down on the inside of my cheek, hard. The sharp, coppery taste of my own vital fluid, the jolt of real, physical pain, was a bucket of ice water on my drowsy mind. The lethargy receded, replaced by a frantic, adrenaline-fueled clarity. "We have to go," I said, pulling her, stumbling, towards the exit of the biodome. "Now." But as we moved, the humming grew louder, more insistent. The beautiful golden spores in the air, which had been drifting aimlessly, now swirled around us, a thick, glittering fog. They were trying to hold us, to soothe us, to pull us back into the beautiful, deadly peace. It was like trying to run through water. I pulled the collar of my flight suit up over my nose and mouth, a futile attempt to filter the air. We burst out of the biodome and back into the alien jungle. But the song was not just in the dome. It was everywhere. The entire valley was humming. The very air alive with the starseed's lullaby. "The ship," I gasped, my lungs burning, my mind fighting a desperate war against the sweet, encroaching fog. "We have to get back to the ship." The journey back was a waking nightmare. We stumbled through the glowing, beautiful forest, every fiber of our being screaming at us to lie down, to rest, to surrender. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Every step was a battle of will against biology. My injured leg, which the painkiller had masked, was now a dead, heavy weight I had to drag behind me. Aris was fading. She was a botanist, more attuned to the planet's life, and she was more susceptible to its song. She stumbled and fell to her knees, her eyes glazing over again. "It's so peaceful, Jett," she murmured, a blissful smile on her face. Maybe we should just rest for a while." "No," I growled, hauling her back to her feet, my own consciousness fraying at the edges. "There's no resting, not here. Here, rest is death." I needed an anchor, something to focus on, a pain sharp enough to cut through the beautiful, deadly fog. I looked at Aris, at her beautiful, slack-jawed face, and I did the only thing I could think of. I manufactured a conflict. "Your sister," I said, my voice a cruel, sharp jab. "You told me about your sister. Is this going to save her, Aris? Lying down in the dirt? Giving up?" I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a spark of pain, of memory. "My sister," she whispered. "Yes," I pressed, my words a desperate, brutal medicine. "The one who's dying. The one you came all this way for. You're going to let a pretty song stop you now?" The blissful, empty look in her eyes was replaced by a flash of her old, fierce, green-eyed fire. Anger. A beautiful, life-saving negative emotion. The fog in her mind receded, burned away by the force of her own love and guilt. "No," she said, her voice a low, determined growl. And she started walking again, her pace now as desperate and frantic as my own. We were a mess of raw, exposed nerves, fueling ourselves with the very pain and anger the starseed was trying to soothe away. We were fighting a song with our own broken human noise. We finally saw it through the trees. The Wanderer. A beautiful, ugly, broken piece of home. It was glowing with the soft, golden light of the sun petal cells, a beacon in the encroaching twilight. We scrambled inside, and I slammed the entry ramp shut, the heavy thud of the metal door sealing out. The hypnotic, humming air. We were safe. We collapsed in the cockpit, panting, our bodies trembling with the aftershock of the psychic battle. The silence of the ship was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Aris was the first to speak, her voice a raw, ragged whisper. "Thank you," she said, not looking at me. "What you said about my sister, it was cruel, and it saved my life." "Just returning the favor," I said, my own voice rough. "You saved me from the rust. I saved you from the song." We sat there for a long time, the shared near-death experience a new, unbreakable bond between us. The starseed was a lie. Her quest, the entire purpose of her journey, was built on a false hope. I looked at her, expecting to see her beautiful, optimistic spirit finally broken. But I was wrong. She was not broken. She was a scientist. She pulled up her datapad, her fingers, though trembling, moving with a new, fierce purpose. "The song," she said, her voice low and intense. It's a biosonic field. It doesn't just induce euphoria, it communicates. It's a network, a hive mind. The plants, the spores, the starseed, they are all one consciousness. She brought up the data from her initial scan of the starseed. And it's not a parasite, she whispered, her eyes wide with a new, dawning realization. It's a symbiont. It doesn't kill, it preserves. The scientists, it put them into a state of permanent, blissful hibernation. It integrated them. It's not a tomb, Jett. It's an ark. My blood ran cold. An ark for what? She pointed to a line of cascading code in the starseed's genetic makeup, a line that was almost identical to a code I had seen once before, in a Xylos Corporation quarantine file. It was a viral code. The blight. Oh my gods, Aris breathed. The blight. It didn't originate on my world. It originated here. This entire planet. It's the source. The starseed isn't the cure for the blight. It's the cause. And its song. It's not a trap for us. It's a quarantine, to stop the blight from ever escaping this world. The Ethel Corporation hadn't abandoned the planet because they had failed. They had abandoned it because they had succeeded too well. They had created a cure, a beautiful, sentient, planetary consciousness. But its method of curing the blight was to put all living things into a permanent, blissful sleep. And we were now trapped on a plague world with a broken ship, a ticking clock, and a beautiful, singing god that wanted, more than anything, for us to just lie down and become a part of its perfect, silent garden. The revelation crashed over us with the force of a physical blow. We were not just trespassers on a forbidden world. We were rats in a cage with a sleeping dragon, and we had just spent 2 days poking it with a stick. The starseed, Aris's mythical cure, was the source of a galaxy-spanning plague. The beautiful hypnotic song of the planet was not a lullaby. It was a containment protocol, a beautiful, deadly quarantine field designed to keep the blight from ever leaving Veridia. And my ship's emergency beacon was set to broadcast our position to the entire sector in less than a day. It was no longer just a death sentence for us. It was a potential death sentence for billions. We have to stop it, Aris said, her voice a low, intense whisper, her green eyes burning with a new, terrifying fire. The botanist was gone, replaced by a soldier in a war she had unknowingly stumbled into. The beacon, we can't let it transmit. If Ethel or any other corporation traces it back here and finds out what this planet really is, they won't try to contain it. They'll try to weaponize it. She was right. The starseed's ability to pacify and integrate all biological life on a planetary scale was the most powerful and terrifying bioweapon imaginable. In the hands of a corporate state, it would be unstoppable. The beacon is hardwired, I countered, my pilot's mind already running through the grim logistics. It's a failsafe. It's designed to be unstoppable. I can't just turn it off. Then, we destroy it, she said, her logic as sharp and brutal as my own had once been. And the ship with it. We can't let anyone follow us here. We can't let this thing out. I stared at her. Destroy the ship? Aris, that's our only way home. This is bigger than our home, she shot back, her conviction absolute. It's bigger than my sister. This is about everyone. We can't be the ones who unleash this on the galaxy. She was right. The cynical, selfish smuggler in me screamed in protest, but the man who had held her hand in the dark, the man who had seen her fierce, unwavering courage, knew she was right. Our personal survival was now a secondary objective. We had a new mission: to protect the very quarantine we had violated, to become the new unwitting guardians of this beautiful, terrible tomb. Overloading the sun petal power cells should be enough, I said, my voice grim as I accepted the insane, suicidal logic of her plan. It'll create a chain reaction, vaporize the ship, and a good chunk of this valley. It'll erase our footprint completely. How long will it take? She asked. Once I start the sequence, we'll have 10 minutes, I said. 10 minutes to get as far away as possible. The plan was set. A 10-minute head start before we willingly destroyed our only way off this planet, stranding ourselves here forever, all to protect a galaxy that didn't even know we existed. It was the craziest, most noble, and most terrifying thing I had ever agreed to do. We spent the next few hours in a state of quiet, focused preparation. We gathered what little we could from the ship: a med kit, water purifiers, a single high-powered pulse rifle I had kept under the floor panels. We were no longer just survivors. We were colonists, preparing for a new, permanent, and very dangerous life. As we worked, a new, unspoken intimacy settled between us. The desperate, frantic passion of our first kiss was gone, replaced by the quiet, profound bond of two soldiers facing a final, impossible battle together. There were no more secrets, no more lies. We were just Jett and Aris, two flawed, frightened humans, standing against the end of the world. Before we left the ship for the last time, Aris did something I didn't expect. She went to her crate, the one that held her life's work, and took out a single, small, hermetically sealed container. Inside, nestled in a nutrient gel, was a tiny dormant cutting from the starseed. A single, glowing, golden seed. "Aris, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharp with alarm. "We can't take that with us. That's the plague." "It's not the plague, Jett," she said, her voice soft, her eyes full of a scientist's unshakable faith. "It's the cure. The song, the euphoria. That's just its immune system, its quarantine. The real power, the ability to recode life, to heal. It's in the seed. The ethel scientists were wrong. They tried to control it. They tried to suppress it. They never tried to understand it. They never tried to communicate." She was insane. Beautifully, brilliantly, and completely insane. "I am a botanist, Jett," she said, her hand closing around the container. "My life's work is to listen to what life wants, and this wants to heal. I know it." I didn't argue. In this world, her insane hope was a more reliable guide than my cynical experience. We stood at the bottom of the ramp, ready to leave the Wanderer for the last time. I turned to her. "Ready?" She nodded, her green eyes steady and clear. "Ready." "Good. Find us a cave, someplace high, someplace defensible," I said, handing her the pulse rifle. "I'll set the timer and I'll meet you there." She hesitated, her hand on the rifle. "Come with me now, Jett. We can run together." "No," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "Someone has to make sure the job gets done. It's what a good pilot does, goes down with his ship." I gave her a small, crooked smile. "Besides, you're the one with the green thumb. I'm just the guy who breaks things. Go. I'll be right behind you." She looked at me. A universe of unsaid things passing between us in a single, silent moment. She didn't argue. She trusted me. She turned and ran, disappearing into the glowing alien jungle, a lone scientist carrying an impossible hope. I watched her go until she was out of sight. Then, I turned and walked back into the cockpit of my ship, my home, for the last time. My leg was a dull, throbbing ache. My heart was a strange, unfamiliar mix of terror and a profound, quiet peace. I sat in the pilot's seat, my hands moving over the controls with a familiar, practiced grace. I initiated the overload sequence. A new, high-pitched whine filled the cockpit as the sun petal cells began to destabilize. A countdown timer appeared on the main screen. 10 SEU. I should have left then. But I didn't. I leaned back in my chair, my hands behind my head. I looked out the viewport at the beautiful, deadly, and now permanent home I had chosen. The humming of the starseeds. Song was a faint, gentle lullaby, even through the ship's hull. It was no longer threatening. It was just there. I had spent my entire life running, from the syndicate, from the law, from any and all connections. And now, my running was done. I had found a cause worth dying for. I had found a person worth staying for. And in the heart of a doomed ship, on a plague-ridden world at the edge of the galaxy, I finally, truly felt at peace. The countdown timer on the screen was a cold, digital heartbeat, marking the final moments of my ship, my past, my life as a smuggler. 0842. The hum of the overloading power cells grew from a whine to a low, guttural growl. The golden light from the sun petal nodes, once warm and life-giving, now pulsed with a frantic, angry intensity. I had made my peace. I was ready. My only regret was not having more time with her. That's when I saw it. Through the cockpit viewport, a flicker of motion in the glowing jungle. It was not Aris. It was something large, dark, and fast. My smuggler's instincts, the ones that had kept me alive for a decade in the lawless fringe, screamed a silent primal warning. We were not alone in this valley. The creature emerged from the tree line. It was a terrifying, beautiful thing, a nightmare born of this alien ecosystem. It was a massive, insectoid predator, easily twice the size of my ship. Its body a sleek, chitinous black, its multiple, spider-like legs, ending in razor-sharp talons. A pair of large, multifaceted eyes, glowing with a predatory crimson light, fixed on the pulsating, energy-rich prize in the center of the valley. My ship. The Wanderer. It had been drawn by the energy overload. I had not just set a timer for a bomb. I had rung the dinner bell for the apex predator of Veridia. And Aris was out there, alone, armed with a single rifle, trying to find a cave. The creature was between her and the relative safety of the high ground. My blood ran cold. The quiet, noble peace I had felt just moments before evaporated, replaced by a surge of pure, cold, adrenaline-fueled terror. But it was not for myself. It was for her. 06:13. Aris, get back to the ship, I yelled into my comm, my voice a raw, desperate bark. Now! There's something here! Her panicked voice crackled back. Jett? What is it? I hear it. It's huge! The creature let out a high-pitched, chittering screech, a sound that vibrated through the hull of the ship. It began to advance on the Wanderer, its massive talons tearing great gashes in the soft, glowing moss of the valley floor. It saw my ship as a rival, a challenge, a meal. I had to make a choice. Stay in the ship, my bomb, and hope it went off before the creature tore it, and me, to pieces. Or run, abandon the plan, and try to draw the creature's attention away from Aris. There was no choice at all. I grabbed my pulse emitter and a spare power cell and sprinted for the ramp. Aris, run for the high ground, I commanded. Don't stop, don't look back, that's an order! I hit the ramp at a dead sprint, my injured legs screaming in protest. Hey, ugly! I roared, firing a bolt of blue energy that splashed harmlessly against the creature's thick black carapace. Dinner's over here! The creature's massive, multifaceted eyes swiveled, its crimson gaze locking onto me. It had a new target now, a smaller, more annoying one. It let out another deafening screech and changed course, charging not at the ship, but at me. I ran. 4:52. I was never going to outrun it. It was impossibly fast, its massive legs eating up the ground. I was just a distraction, a desperate, suicidal gambit to buy her a few more seconds. I fired again and again, my energy bolts doing little more than annoying the colossal beast. It was almost on top of me, its great shadow looming over me, its razor-sharp talons raised to strike. I closed my eyes, a final defiant curse on my lips, and then the song changed. The gentle, hypnotic humming of the starseed, which had been a constant, lulling background noise, suddenly stopped. In its place, a new sound bloomed, a single, pure, and impossibly powerful chime that was not a lullaby, but a command. It was a note of absolute, unquestionable authority. The creature, its talon inches from my head, froze. It let out a low, confused, almost whimpering chitter and took a hesitant step back. Its crimson, predatory eyes swiveled from me, towards the source of the new sound, towards the biodome. Aris. She was standing at the entrance to the ruined biodome, her rifle discarded on the ground. She was not running. She was not hiding. She was standing perfectly still, her hands outstretched. And in her hands, she held the small, hermetically sealed container, the cutting from the starseed. It was no longer a dormant seed. It was glowing with a brilliant golden light, a miniature sun in her palms, and it was pulsing in time with the new powerful chime that echoed through the valley. She had not run. She had gone back. She had gone back for the one weapon she knew how to use. Communicate, she had said. She was not just holding the seed. She was interfacing with it, her own, unique botanist's mind reaching out, not with fear or aggression, but with a question, an offering. 02:17. The giant predator, its killer instinct completely overridden by the starseed's command, turned away from me. It moved towards Aris, not with aggression, but with a strange, slow, almost reverent gait. It knelt before her, its massive, terrifying head bowing until it rested on the ground at her feet, a gesture of absolute primal submission. I stared, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. She had not just tamed the beast, she had commanded it. She had spoken its language. "Aris," I breathed into the calm. "What did you do?" I listened. Her voice came back, calm and steady, filled with a new, profound, and slightly terrifying power. "Like I said, it wants to heal. It wants to protect. It just needed someone to show it how." 01 or 03. "That's great, Doctor," I said, my voice tight with urgency. "But in about 60 seconds, my ship is going to vaporize this entire, very peaceful valley." I saw her look from the bowing monster at her feet to the pulsating, angry glow of my ship, and I saw the calculation, the impossible choice, in her eyes. "The ship's core," she said, her voice sharp, analytical. "The energy is chaotic, but it's still just energy. The starseed, it absorbs energy. It recodes it." She began to walk, calmly and purposefully, towards my ship, the giant, black predator rising and following her like a loyal, monstrous hound. "Jett." Her voice was a calm command. "I need you to do exactly as I say. I'm going to try to stabilize the reaction." She was going to try to disarm a fusion bomb with a magical alien flower. She was completely, utterly, and magnificently insane. I scrambled to my feet and ran, not away from the ship, but towards it, towards her. I was not going to let her face this alone. 00:15. I reached her side just as she arrived at the open maw of my ship's fractured power core, a swirling vortex of unstable golden energy. The heat was immense. The noise was a deafening roar. 00:10. "Aris, it's too late," I yelled over the chaos. "It's never too late," she yelled back, her face illuminated by the raw power of the dying core, her green eyes shining with an impossible, beautiful faith. "It just needs to learn a new song." And with a final, desperate act of will, she held the glowing starseed out and plunged it directly into the heart of the storm. The moment the starseed touched the overloading power core was a moment of absolute, perfect silence. The deafening roar of the dying engines, the high-pitched whine of the countdown timer, the hypnotic humming of the valley, it all vanished. The universe seemed to hold its breath. A single, brilliant, and impossibly bright point of golden light bloomed where the core had been, swallowing all sound, all color, all thought. I threw my arm in front of my face, a useless gesture against a power that felt like the birth of a new sun. I felt Aris's body press against mine. It was the end. A beautiful, silent, and golden apocalypse. But the end did not come. The light, instead of exploding outwards, began to collapse inwards. The violent, chaotic energy of the overloading core was being absorbed, pulled into the tiny glowing seed in Aris's hand. The golden light of the ship's interior softened, the angry, frantic pulsing slowing to a calm, steady, rhythmic glow. The countdown timer on the YA console flickered and then simply vanished. The silence was broken by a new sound, a soft, gentle, and melodic hum, a sound of perfect, harmonious stability. It was the sound of a new, healthy heart, beating in the chest of my dying ship. We were alive. I slowly lowered my arm. The cockpit of the Wanderer was transformed. It was no longer a mess of sparking wires and fractured metal. A strange, organic, crystalline growth, the color of amber, had spread out from the power core, sealing the breaches in the hull, reinforcing the damaged consoles, its internal light a warm, steady glow. And in the center of it all, floating where the power core had been, was the starseed. It was no longer a small cutting. It had bloomed, its crystalline petals unfolding to reveal a pulsating, golden heart. It had not just absorbed the energy, it had integrated with my ship. It had healed it. I looked at Aris. She was staring at the new, living heart of the ship, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated awe. "I told you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "It wants to heal." My ship, my beautiful, broken, cynical ship, was now a living thing, a perfect, impossible fusion of technology and alien life. It was a new species, born of our desperation. Outside, the valley was also transformed. The hypnotic, dangerous hum was gone. The air was clear. The giant insectoid predator, its function as a guardian no longer needed, simply turned and lumbered silently back into the glowing forest, disappearing into the trees. The quarantine was over. The planet was no longer a trap. It was just a garden. "Your emergency beacon," Aris said, pointing to the console. The red flashing light had gone out. The starseed used the energy to send out a single powerful broad-spectrum pulse. Not a distress call, a song. It told the galaxy not that we are in trouble, but that this place is healed. Safe. I looked at her, at the beautiful, brilliant, and completely insane woman who had just tamed a planet, healed my ship with a flower, and rewritten every single law of physics I thought I knew. My cynicism, the hard protective shell I had worn my entire life, didn't just crack. It shattered into a million useless pieces. "My sister," she whispered, her green eyes now filled with a new, bright, and beautiful hope. "I can save her now." She had her cure. She had her ship. Her mission was over. She could go home. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Our partnership, this strange, intense, and beautiful thing we had built in the heart of this impossible world, was over. I was a smuggler, a criminal. I had no place in her world of hope and healing. "I guess this is where we part ways, Doctor," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. "You've got your miracle. I'll just take my payment and disappear." She turned to face me, and the joyous, triumphant look in her eyes was replaced by something else. A flicker of hurt, of confusion. "Is that what you think this was?" she asked softly. "A job?" "It's what it was," I said, my old cynical armor trying desperately to piece itself back together. "I'm a pilot. You're a client. The contract is complete." She closed the distance between us, her hands coming up to rest on my chest. "You're a fool, Jett," she whispered, her green eyes searching mine. "After everything we've been through, after all of this, do you really think I'm just going to let you walk away?" She was right. I was a fool. I had been so focused on the dangers of the planet, I had failed to see the most beautiful, most terrifying danger of all. Her. "My world needs this," she said, gesturing to the glowing starseed. "It needs a cure, but it also needs people who understand it. People who aren't afraid of the wild, the beautiful, the impossible." She looked up at me, a slow, brilliant smile spreading across her face. "I'm going to need a pilot. A cynical, stubborn, and ridiculously brave pilot who's good at breaking the rules and even better at fixing broken things." "That's not a job description, Aris," I said, my own voice a low murmur. "That's a life sentence." "I know," she said. "What do you say, pilot? Ready for one more bumpy landing?" I looked at her, at the incredible, impossible woman who had crashed into my life and rearranged my entire universe. I thought of my old life, a life of running, of hiding, of lonely, empty star charts. And I thought of this new life, a life of danger, of wonder, and of her. It was not a logical choice. It was not a safe choice. It was the only choice. I lowered my head and kissed her. And this time, there was no desperation, no fear. There was just a quiet, profound, and deeply certain sense of coming home. Our ship, our new, living, breathing ship, seemed to hum in response, the golden light from its new heart bathing us in a warm, gentle glow. We were no longer stranded. We were no longer alone. She had been hired to find a cure. I had been hired to fly a ship. But somewhere along the way, in the heart of a beautiful, deadly alien garden, we had found something else entirely. Each other. And our real journey, the one we would fly together, was just beginning. I looked out at the star-dusted void, no longer an empty expanse to be crossed, but a universe of possibilities to be explored. With her. Our story was not over. It was just getting started.